it was blurred or something.
Okay, the one that you posted.
The screen, yeah. But I just posted it. But yeah. Just relax.
I'm relaxed. I'm cool. I'm good. I'm good. You said, okay. This is what you meant, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or maybe we should pray before.
Yeah. Yes.
Can you say the prayer?
Thank you, Father. Bless the food, bless the camera, bless one another, bless our families. We love you. In Jesus' name.
Let's do this. So before we start this video, like I just want to thank you so much for taking the time once again to come here. And so like the last video we did, like I forgot to introduce any of my guests. And so like before we start, I would like it if you can say a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, my name's Quad. I'm from New York City. I'm a musician. I love to do music. I've been doing music my whole life. But I'm in Korea. I'm working as a teacher. And I'm hopefully going to university for graphic design. Because I've been doing art since I was little, very little. So that's another part of who I am. I know you asked me about my background, and I am American, so obviously I'm from New York, but my parents are from different countries in the West Indies. So my mom is from a small island called Guadeloupe. Guadeloupe is actually part of France. And my father is from Haiti. And so they met in France, and then they moved to America. So, and then, you know, I had their family. So now I am currently a French American who lives in Korea. And so that is my story right
That's
now.
awesome. Okay, like we have that down.
Okay,
All right,
awesome.
all right. And regarding your calling last time, you wanted to clarify it, right? Because we just like kind of skimmed over it, and I think the main calling you had was music, right? And we talked about you like helping people come into ministry and all these things, but I think you forgot to talk about music. So like,
Yeah. I think it's a common thing for people who are, I guess, called or have a talent in music to kind of overlook that and just say, you know, well, that's not actually serious. I don't know why people don't think being artistic can't be serious. But it's for, I know even for me, it's easy to forget, like, oh, you know, I'm called to do this. I can help people in this way. I can help people. I was saying last time, I can help leaders become better leaders. I'm very psychic-y. I can very help. I'm very friendly. I'm very good at ministering to people through friendship. But that somehow can sometimes seem more important than just ministering to people through songs. Because realistically or practically speaking, what is a more lucrative skill? Is it communicating with people, or is it making music? And I think everyone who does music or who does arts, know in the back of their mind, I don't think it's respected. And so I do want to, I guess, fix that today and be like, you know what, I'm called to music. That's what I'm called to do.
And when when did you realize that music was your calling? Like when was it? Like at what age? You know.
What age? I'd have to say when I was 20. I'd say 23. I'd say when I was 23. Because basically when I was 23, I ended up going to a church that focused on ministry. And so I was asked the hard questions, what are you called to do? And I had a hard time answering. Because at the time, I guess I wasn't the person I am now. At that time, I was a little broken. And so I felt a huge disconnection between me and my own feelings and everything. I was kind of coming from a constant state of depression. And in that state, I just didn't know. And so there were certain things that I ignored about myself. But then in the last video that we did, I asked him, if you could do anything, what would you do in your heart? That was actually a question that a minister had asked me when I was confused. I was like, I don't know what to answer. And I told her, and she said, so if you could do anything to help anyone, what would you do? And I said, I would sing. Because all I ever wanted to do was sing. And she said, and when you sing, what would you expect to happen? And let me explain why she asked this. Basically, she's coming from the idea that as Christians, our job is not only to bring people to Christ, but to walk in the power of God. And the power of God is what Jesus did. And he did more than just say, hey, come to the Lord. He healed people, he delivered people, he raised people from the dead, he walked across water, he turned water into wine, he did so many things, he multiplied food, he did so many things that showed and testified that God is real to people who wouldn't believe without it. And so when she asked me, what do you expect to happen when you sing? She was asking with that understanding in mind. As I said, well, when I sing, I want people, I guess when I sing, I expect people I see people feeling peaceful. When I sing, I see people feeling this. When I do music, I see that people get, I guess, more calm or something like that. And she asked me what evidence do you see, because that's one of the things that she explained was, you are your calling from birth. Like you don't pick one, like, oh, now that I'm this age, I'm wise enough to pick what I want to be. It doesn't work like that. She said that it's who you are. And so if it's who you are, you should have seen evidence your whole life of what your calling is. And she asked me to stop and think about it. And so I had to stop. I was like, oh, when I sing, people feel better. People, she said, that's deliverance. When you sing, expecting deliverance, you should see deliverance. People, spirits lifting. Like, not in the sense of, your spirits are lifting, that too. But like, demonic spirits are being cast out as you sing. And she said, well, do you see, how do you know this is your gift? How do you know this is your calling? Did you see it in my life? And I thought about it and I said, my whole life, no matter where I went, I always found myself joining the praise team. Even if I was there for like one day, somehow or another, I'd find a praise team in whatever random country I'd be in, and I'd be part of the praise team. And that's just what creating music is just such a part of my life that it was so easy to ignore. So, but at the same time, if I could tell what my calling is, I'm just looking at my life, it's okay, devil. And so, I could also see in my life all the ways that was oppressed and stopped me from knowing. Because at the same time, I didn't want to be music. I don't want. Even now, I want now because it took me. It's been so long since I've decided. But even now, it's the idea is scary because my personality, I'm very timid, I'm a very quiet and gentle person. And you know, in music, you just gotta be out there and like you have to tell me I talk too low because I didn't even notice because I'm just a very quiet person. But when I perform, all that doesn't even matter because I'm just
in your element, I guess.
I'm in my element. I'm just being myself. Oh, you want me to sing? Okay, I'll sing.
There's so many things like I want to talk about.
Do it.
Just
I'm ready.
What you just said.
Go ahead.
It's like for someone who is like they have so many different talents in their life. Like for example, you're good at art. You're good at like communication. Like you said, like helping someone find their ministry, and at the same time you're good at music. And so like it's easy to get confused. So how do you
decide which is the priority? Right.
Because you're good at everything, but then like you have to choose one. And so many like people like I think they get confused by that.
Well, I'm not good at everything. I'm only good at some things, and so that already makes it easier. It's just like the reality is I'm only good at what I'm good at, which is the same for every single person on the earth. Other thing is, people who are creative tend to be creative in many different areas. so
it can, how do you say, like translate into different areas.
Yeah, like how many singers get into acting? Because they have that ability.
Performance in front of
exactly. It's
comfortable in front of you.
That's how God created people, I guess. But I love anime, and there is this idea in anime, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just cool. When you have like people with powers, they say, they divide people by different classes of powers.
Yeah.
And they always have this chart where like this is your class, this is your class, this is your class, this class. This one's related to this one, this is related to this one, this is related to this one, this one's related to this one. And though these two are opposite, so you can't do that. But even though it's not necessarily godly, it's a very practical way to look at gifts. And it's kind of realistic because that's how people kind of really are. It's just like, you're creative, you're this section. So
I think we box them into their categories, right?
Yeah.
And so like we limit them in that area.
That's the thing.
Like we're not like those characters you can, like.
That's the thing. Like to answer your question, we have to like first get an understanding of that. It's like we are just people, and so we're just like a smudge of colors, and we have to figure out. So to decide what is prominent, you can't say what I'm good at because many people are good at those things. And being creative, I would expect many creative people to be good at other things. So that's not a reason to say this is my calling. How you know what your calling is, for me, is just ask God and let God tell you what is important. And so for me, it took me a long time to get over past hurts, past oppressions from the enemy, and my own poor self-image of what I think my calling or me being that calling should look like. And once I got past all that, I had to hear from God, and I felt like I was saying, this is what your calling is. And I saw Him confirm it in different ways, many times over the years, and confirm it by seeing the fruit, because you'll judge a tree by its fruit, right? It's a good tree or a healthy tree, it'll have good fruit. If it's an unhealthy tree, it'll have bad fruit. And that scripture in the Bible is realistically talking about people. If it's your gift and it's something that God has graced you to do, then you should do well at it. And if you're not, then you'll be banging your head against a wall. And maybe that's too simple for some more spiritually deep people, but that's just really how it is. If God doesn't want you to do it, then you won't be able to do it, because God is God and you can't control anything. So I think that's part of the shame in the last video where I said my calling wrong, because I was just like, wait, like that's something I can't get wrong. I need to always remember.
To clarify it.
Yeah, because then that changes is what you said.
Yeah.
How can you tell which one's it? And it's so easy to just get confused and oh, this is my primary, this is the secondary, and confuse your calling because you forgot it, because you get caught up in life and other things. And it's just remember, always remember, because the devil is real. The devil is always trying to get you to forget. Before he gets you to be oppressed, he'll have you forget what God said. Oh, Eve, did God really say that? That's the same trick, and he does to us every single day. So to end that, I'll say, I know I prayed, I sought God, I sought the confirmation, and so now it's up to me to decide, it's up to me to remember that that's my calling. And then everything I do, even if it's completely left field, if it's completely out of what God called me to do, I should expect it to be moving in that direction.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And one more thing I wanted you to clarify is like last time, like when we were just talking, just the two of us, you mentioned that the devil tries to prevent you even before you start. And so I think if you can elaborate a little bit on that.
On the concept, or talking about my test, my own life?
Concept and your life.
Okay. I think is a good place to start, because that's like a huge question, and that could be like a 2-hour-long sermon. But let's take example of Moses. Everyone knows that before Moses became Moses, he was a baby that was going to get killed, because Pharaoh was going to kill all the firstborns for, and of the Jews, as he was, the Egyptians at the time had an issue with Jewish people, or Hebrew people at the time. And so his mother saved him by putting him into the river, which is symbolic for, obviously, the salvation. But that's one example of how the devil will orchestrate things to make sure that you never become who you are. Moses, his cause, obviously now we know he became one of the most prominent, most important people in human history as far as salvation is concerned. And so first tried to kill him as a baby. Then he got older, he grew up in the house of Pharaoh. We don't know what kind of life he had, but he stayed there until he was 40. Can he really be a savior in the house of Pharaoh? And the answer was no, he had to leave. And so even though he was 40 years old, he was a fully adult man, his calling could not be realized because he was in this position. So he had to go, and different situations had happened. But each step of the way, you can see how Moses would just take one step forward, and something would happen to kind of push him back. Whether it was even afterwards when he was already leading the people, and the people would turn, and it's just everything, step forward, step back, step forward, step back. He was leading the people, they arrived, and then they couldn't even get into the promised land, even though he believed, but they didn't believe, so everything forward, back, forward, back. And this tug of war in life is just evidence that there's an enemy that's trying to stop, not you, because we're just people, but stop what God was doing.
In your life?
Stop what God was doing in the world. What Moses did was so important to not him, not to the Hebrew people, to every human on the planet, then and now. And we underestimate the importance of our lives and overestimate us. So we think we are important, not recognizing our life is important, because we don't know what we're doing, how it can affect everything, the future, because ultimately everything is God's plan. But how can we know? We're just people. So you originally asked me, how can the devil oppress you? And the answer, simple answer is God has a plan that we don't understand. And because we don't understand, the devil can take advantage of that and put blocks and stumbling blocks along the way. Because we don't even know the strength, the importance of our role in God's plan. Because all of us are just parts of His plan. And each part is important. No part is less important than the other, and there are many scriptures about that too. And the reason is because of God's plan. And so in our lives, one of the most common things that the devil does is he gives us, because life is hard, he gives us, or we learn self-defense mechanisms. And I think self-defense mechanisms are one of the hardest things, or one of the biggest things that are in us that go against God. Because we all learn from the hardness of life how to protect ourselves. But in protecting ourselves, we're not allowing God to protect us and to guide us. And so, in individual circumstances, like where someone's doing something wrong, you can react a certain way that's not godly, and that can invite some other issues, or even bigger things like important life decisions. I will never do this because I've been hurt in the past, and so I will not go this route because I don't want to be hurt. And that's self-defense to protect us from getting hurt like we did in the past. But it's God's will and God's plan. And so we can't, once we get saved, the first thing we should address is that self-defense. And say, this is the pain that where it came from. God, heal it. I'm getting rid of this self-defense. Ask Him to protect me, so that way, when you tell me to go somewhere, I can go, and I won't give places for the enemy to stop me from fulfilling your plan in my life and in this world. And I would encourage everyone to stop thinking about my life. Even though I just said it, I didn't feel good saying it, because it's not. It's just God's plan, regardless of my life or not. And that's a huge, mature thing to say, because who wants to live like that? But that's just, if it's God's plan, then you should be happy about it. And
that's so very, like, I needed to hear that. Like you said, like, the devil tries to prevent you before you start your calling, your ministry, whatever. And then another one is like he confuses you along the way. And so like you mentioned that very lightly. So like I think personally, like I think I was in that state also. Like, and like you mentioned, like thinking back and then like figuring out like where you had that passion from a young age, right? Regarding music or whatever. Like for me also, I think I mentioned to you before, like we used to have Sunday school, and I would like gather the kids and like teach them. And then I remember my parents mentioning, like, like I was able to communicate with both older people and younger. So I think God gave me that, I think a communication skill, I guess, to be able to talk to anyone. Yeah, like, and the devil in a way tried to prevent that by telling me, like, like it made me so like self-conscious, like you were saying. Like I was, like even having family worship and stuff like that, I would get super nervous, like reading the Bible verses in front of other people. And I don't know why, like at a certain age, suddenly, like I developed that shame. And then even singing as a kid, like I remember one of my friend, I guess relative, something like that, mentioned like you sounded like a girl. And after that I stopped singing. And then like I noticed like my voice, like I stopped singing, and then like I tried to sing in a lower voice or like, something like that.
Yeah.
And then I just gave up on that. But like recently, after once again, like I'm finding that passion in singing. I find myself singing in the shower and stuff like that.
That's good.
And even playing guitar, and like I used to do that as a kid. And then something happened that prevented me from doing that. And so like I think it's so true what you just said. Like he tries to prevent you from like allowing the Lord to fulfill His plan in your life. And so like I realized that happening in my own life. So I think
I think it's like what you pointed out. There are two ways to look at life. You could say they're both right. You could say life is hard, so I got hurt. Or two, the devil caused things to happen and made me get hurt. All this before I got saved, because without being saved, you don't have the protection, or at least consciously being saved. Like when you're a kid, you can say, love the Lord, and some kids have the ability to be like, you know what, I want to love the Lord. But to that moment where you consciously say, I'm following the Lord, you're vulnerable. And so, why does life happen? Why is things life so hard? It's because we're in a world full of people who are not protected. And so people act out, lash out, do all these things. And that wants to make life hard because we're not protected. Now, life would have been easy if you were the only one on the earth. If it was just Adam, there would have been no sin. But Adam and Eve together, now there's place because there's more than one person. But that's not to say it's Eve's fault. It's just to say that the more people there are, the harder life becomes, because there's more avenue or more ways for more people the devil can manipulate. You yourself included. Because let's be real, we do the wrong things too. But it's hurt. It's what stops us from feeling our calling. It really does. Until we can get over hurt, what can we do?
And it's so easy, like for us to like just like be like comments, like it might not mean much for us, but for someone who's growing up, it might mean a lot for them, right? And that can, for you, it didn't mean anything, but for that person listening, it might affect the rest of their life. What happens to them? And so, like, I think we should be very careful in how like we communicate with others also, so that we don't become that stumbling block for them also. I realized that.
I think one example for me, I guess, is that's still actually I'm still battling with is fear of singing. I'm actually still very afraid of singing in public, even though I do it every Sunday. But I think I used to, when I was younger, I think I was aware of it when I was in high school. I was very, very, very quiet, to the point that I never spoke when I was in school. I never raised my hands, nothing. I was always the nice, quiet kid. Everyone liked me because I never said anything bad, because I never said anything. But when I was in high school, I really, really became aware of it and questioned it. Why am I so quiet? Because for me, I knew my personality on the inside. And I know I'm very friendly, very bubbly person, but I didn't act like it. I was very just, and I wasn't afraid of anyone. I wasn't afraid of talking in public. There was nothing that stopped me from, personality-wise. I was I couldn't find anything that was well, why don't I just speak? And then I felt aware, I felt like something was choking me. I couldn't talk. It was like there's something stopping me from actually speaking. And it took me a while. And later, when I started learning more about demonic spirits and oppression, I learned that I was being under a spiritual oppression. I was actually stopping me from being free. And so then I battled it, you know, and I overcame it.
Mm.
And so I didn't have that same thing that was like choking me. I felt like it was like, I used to have dreams of like being some demonic thing holding me and I couldn't move. And like there's just something I couldn't do. So when I was, it was something I had to battle. You know, always. You know, even today I have to battle it still. But then I started working at a church in Florida. And it was great. There was nothing wrong with the church itself. But I didn't feel comfortable. I was telling you before in another conversation that I wasn't really feeling comfortable in church. So, and I found one of the problems was there was no place for me to feel free to sing. Because there were, in America, there are lots of amazing singers, especially with black people. There are a lot of amazing black singers. And me, I'm someone who was just got over being silent. And so I was beginner singer. And I had, I guess, enough talent to overcome the fact that I'm just starting. But, you know, that's not enough. If there are better singers, then why would anyone leave me?
I think that's another lie the devil puts in your head.
Yeah.
Right? Because we have to serve him in any way we can. We don't have to be perfect. But we expect, you know, like we put standards on ourselves. And like I have to be this good at this, you know.
Yeah.
And as you start serving the Lord, like makes you grow, right? You develop into that skill, and you know, like. But then the first step, I think, is always difficult. Even for me, like right now, starting this thing, like, I feel super self-conscious, like the way I speak, or you know, like am I mumbling, or like am I, you know, like. All these things, like I have all these doubts in my head, but I'm like, you know, it's not, the focus is not on me. And so like the focus is more on who we can help through this. And so like if even one person is listening, and you know that person is able to connect and you know like be inspired, or like you know like this able to find their calling through this, then I'm like, you know, like I feel like I'm fulfilling God's will in my life. And so that's one of the reasons, I think, like you said, like, you know, when we're walking in that path, I mean, He uses us and He strengthens us, right, and gives us the ability to overcome those oppressions of the spirit and all these things. Yesterday, I wanted to share was like, you know, I was talking with Pastor Don about that, and we were talking about God's calling and living a fulfilled life, and you know, like, you know, living a Christian life. And I mentioned this like as I was going through that period. Like I mentioned to my brother also, I said the amazing thing is like God calls you to live a fulfilled, you know, like blessed life, and then what He does is like He shows you how to live that life. He tells you, everything is written in the Bible, and then when you follow that, He blesses you. It's like how much more, you know, like love can you feel, right? He calls you, He tells you how to do it, and then when you do it, He blesses you. It's like, you know, like, but you know, we make it complicated, right? Yeah. Hello. Awesome. Hello. Can you try? Okay. Say something.
I ate chicken and rice. Chicken and rice is really good. You know what's better than chicken and rice? Kimbap. You know what's better than kimbap? Alligator. Have you ever had alligator? Alligator is so good, especially with a little bit of seasoning and fried. Alligator is really good. Have you ever had raccoon?
That sounds yummy.
Yeah, you are disgusting. No.
Oh, that's awesome. Perfect.
And I thought of using the city. This is Kendor, right? The Superman city.
I don't know.
And I looked at this small one back here. I said, it'd be awesome. I came up with different ideas that might look good. I was like, the weed doesn't fit you. As a person, it's a weird concept. But I was like, okay, how about we say something about the world? here's this is a map, a globe. If you count like this.
Yeah, I like this one. Like more straight lines, more sharp pronounced. Instead
Yeah.
of the curvy ones.
So this was just like a.
What I meant was the city inside. This is only picture.
So yeah, this is I just took this picture.
I was thinking more of the lines inside. Like straight lines and actual concept. Like,
Oh, I see what you mean. Well, that made it easier.
what is this? Like,
This it just be a globe almost.
Oh.
Well, not colored in.
it's like it kind of looks like the what do you call that? Crescent moon, right?
It does.
That's right.
And the moon represents the church. It reflects the light of the sun. Oh, isn't that deep? Anyway, that's not what this was. It was just the outline of the earth.
Oh, okay.